there's an article by Dale Chappell. It's called "Government Snitches Incentivized Witnesses Are the Leading Cause of Wrongful Convictions." And this goes on to discuss how informants are used, and the government's use of informants became a formal part of law enforcement during the Prohibition era in the 20s, where the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms switched to using entrapment and informants to catch gun and alcohol smugglers, making snitching an integral part of the criminal justice system. And then it goes on to explain how it exploded in the 70s when Nixon declared a war on drugs, and the government used the same techniques of entrapment and informants to bust suspected drug offenders. And the article goes on to say a problem is that the informants offer information that law enforcement cannot verify as true. When an informant testifies for the government before a jury, the specific details are usually known only to the informant, which gives the appearance that the informant has inside information. This bolsters the informant's credibility with the jury, and proving that the informant's information is false is nearly an impossible feat for a defendant. And, you know, that's it in a nutshell. Because if you have somebody lying, the damage is already done. The prosecutor's putting them on as if they're this upstanding person, this person who now wants to make amends and change their life around and do things the right way. So now they're telling all they know. But if you have a liar or a known liar, there is no way of the jury knowing that. And that should come beforehand if you have an honest prosecutor. They should not put somebody on the stand that they know lied, that they caught in lies. And they catch them in a lot of lies. When they do those debriefings, they have the proffer sessions, which is where the informant goes in and talks with the prosecutors and the U.S. attorney. They have many, many proffer sessions, and if you read all the notes, just the layman could read through all the notes and see the inconsistencies. And they could see that the individuals are lying. So you know for a fact that the ones performing the interview know they're lying, and yet they still push through. They still call these informants. They still call them to testify. And the article goes on to say how government witnesses lying on the stand is nothing new, but is how and why they lie that's changed. And it talks about how snitches contribute to wrongful convictions. Prosecutors are heavily invested in the informant's story to make their case, and thus have no real incentive to check a lying informant. This marriage of convenience created by the interests of the prosecutor and informant benefits both parties, with an innocent person sometimes going to prison or the death chamber. So because, you know, this works for the prosecutor and works for the witness, they're gonna go ahead with it, regardless of the fact that somebody's life is on the line, either where they could be possibly put to death, or spend time in jail, or spend the rest of their life in jail. And, you know, they have these incentivized witnesses where one way or another there's an exchange for an expected benefit. And it talks about the benefit and favorable treatment in the person's own criminal case, money, goods for consideration. Some way they get rewarded. So they're being rewarded for that. And they have all, this article is really detailed on informants. And I'll probably tie this in on another episode where I want to discuss the actual informants on the last case. The last case I was involved was a RICO case, and I want to break down the actual informants. You know, I want to go over who they are, and I want to go over what's out on them.